If you love classic cars, then Donald loves you. Please make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon to turn on your notifications, so that way you won't miss any of our widely varied video programs, including those with me and my friend Jay Leno. Also, follow us on Instagram at Audrain Auto Museum and Audrain Motorsport. The Goodwood Festival of Speed always turns up extraordinary cars, especially extraordinary modern cars. And I'm here next to one with an extraordinary lady who is the owner of this car, my great friend Cece Muldoon. Cece, this is an amazing machine and one which suits your personality to a T. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your newest car?
Absolutely. So my newest car is the Scuderia Cameron Glickenhaus 004S. So it is Glickenhaus. So as you know, Jim Glickenhaus has a racing team and a manufacturer, and he has created a road-going version of his GT3 24 Hours of Nürburgring competition car, and it's the 004S. And this is an example of it here. It's the first customer car in the world that's been released.
And what I really love about Jim, as opposed to a lot of other people who are building supercars and hypercars, is that Jim, as you well know, he's a better friend of yours than he is of mine. He is somebody who means what he says and says what he means and does what he says. So these are cars that aren't just barroom numbers. These are cars that perform.
Yes, and Jim wastes no time doing any of those things either. So no, I see him really as the last privateer. He's the last guy who's out there doing all of this on his own with a small team and just getting stuff done, as you say. You know, whether it's racing the Baja or racing 24 Hours of Le Mans or making a customer car in short order, he's up for it, and he puts his money where his mouth is. Absolutely.
It's also great to see a car like this right now as we see it covered with mud, because you drove this car yes. And very spiritedly in the rain here.
I did. So this was actually my first time driving the car. It's the first time the car had been driven, and it's the first time the 004S has been given to a customer and driven. So it really was, and it was my first time up the hill. So it was slightly petrifying.
First on first.
Yes, first on first, and I had to do it in front of thousands of people. So that
no pressure.
No pressure whatsoever. It was an unforgettable experience, I must say. And the bit about, so yesterday we took her out in the rain, and as you can see, she ended up absolutely full of mud. And I said to Jim today, should we polish her for the interview? And he said,
absolutely not.
Leave the mud on her. It just goes to show it's been used.
Exactly. And one of the things that really excites me so much about this is my first Goodwood.
Is
so
it?
It is.
Fabulous.
People, I can't believe it myself. People can't believe that I hadn't been here before.
Yeah.
One of the things that really makes this come alive for me is the fact that I relate to people who relate to cars to use them. Absolutely. And you are very much one of those people, yes. And this is one of those places, and this is one of those cars. Absolutely. So to see it covered with the mud from your run in the rain is perfect.
Do you know what? As our lovely friend Ed Gilbertson says, cars are meant to be driven and motorcycles are meant to be ridden. And that's the whole purpose of these things. Concours are great, but you see them static, and I think when you see them run and you see them actually performing what they were created for, it's the most satisfying thing. So.
And let's just talk a little bit about you, because even though you say you're not extraordinary, you are. I'm terribly sorry. There are very few people that I know who happen to be doctorates in physics and experts in wine and automotive enthusiasts and fashion plates as well. I mean, you have it all. I mean, it's just absolutely wonderful. And I got to meet you through your wonderful parents, who I vintage rallied with, and they're delightful people, so it's not surprising to me that the daughter turned out this way. But so how do you make all these passions come together the way you have?
Well, so I think actually there's a lot of synergies between the things I love. So physics is an underpinning theme in everything. It's just I'm very mechanically minded. I like understanding how things work, how the world works, and whether that be a vacuum chamber or some lasers, some optics, or it be a car. I think that drives my intellectual curiosity in life. The wine is a similar thing. I mean, I think when you start paying attention to your palate, which is something that we don't often do, it's a voyage of discovery, being able to map back what you smell and taste to being particular grape varieties or winemaking methods, or whatever the case may be. And marrying those two things was essentially just, it was fluke, but it was also because I was passionate about both of them. And cars, I think, as I say, understanding how cars work, that kind of works with my intellectual curiosity. But on top of it, I think driving and racing has a lot in common with one of my other passions, which is ballet. Which is balance. It's all about rhythm. It's all about understanding how what your body is doing and what the car is doing. So there's always touch points between passions. And
you brought up a fascinating point. We interviewed here also Lando Norris, the great new F1 star, and he talked about balance in driving, understanding braking as much as acceleration.
Oh, completely. Braking, I think there's, so I had a racing lesson very recently with a man called Rob Wilson, who is known as a bit of like like the horse whisperer in the car world. And he has 9 of the F1 drivers on at the moment as who come do lessons with him. He literally does Lance Stroll every week, and I did a lesson with him in the same Ford Fiesta in the same circuit with the same timer that Lance had done the day before.
We won't ask how you compared because we don't want to embarrass Lance at all.
He has all these F1 drivers as students, and one of the things that Rob points out with the braking thing is that if you brake too suddenly, what happens is you get a weight transfer where the nose goes down, the tail goes up, and it's actually destabilizing to the car, whereas a slow and gradual sudden brake pressure evens out the whole car. You don't have this, now you're at 60-40 as opposed to 20-80. And he will do this, and he'll press on your arm, and he'll say, the difference is this to this, and I think that subtlety in driving, of course you've got to, from a perspective of somebody who doesn't race, you first have to conquer 5,000 other things, right? I mean, like, I'm just starting to heel and toe properly at the moment, and every time I get into a manual car, I'm like double the clutching, rev matching, I'm heeling and towing, I'm doing everything to try to get it ingrained in the system. But for these drivers where, well, I guess nowadays it's all paddles anyway,
right.
But who are so accustomed to doing all these things, suddenly the subtleties, the tiniest bit of difference in your braking pressure and how you angle your body and understanding the car, I think that makes the difference. That's the last couple of microseconds off their time.
And it's not surprising then, much like many musicians are mathematicians as well, your physics background, as you just said, the scientist in you really can focus in on the details and how the details make the whole.
Oh, completely. Absolutely. And I think that's fundamental. If you don't understand what you're driving and why it's doing what it's doing, then you have much less ability to control. Like once you understand how an internal combustion engine works, how a gearbox works, all these things, what is my car? Is it rear-wheel drive? Is it all-wheel drive? All these things make a difference to how it's going to react, to whether it's going to oversteer or understeer or kick the back out. It all has to do with fundamentally understanding what you're driving.
I have to ask this question, which I'm sure you're so tired of being asked, but how do people react to seeing a beautiful, successful woman driving fast in a car? Do they think, well, gee, that's nice, her boyfriend or her husband must have given her that car?
This weekend has been very interesting with this because people come up and they look at me like I have 4 heads when they go, Jim will say, this is the owner. Suddenly it's like, what, she's the owner? Yeah, it is. I think people don't expect it, and that's changing. Of course, there's more and more females in motorsport in particular, but in physics, I think there's still, it's still very male dominant. It depends on the area of physics, especially experimental physics is very male dominant. I think there's something about tinkering where boys are brought up from a very young age, playing with Lego and building things and taking them apart, and girls aren't. Girls are a little bit still more on the dolls and I think those things translate later in life to males of the species being what we call in England tinkerers. So they will be handy with a spanner and they'll want to go and work on stuff. So, but again, it's starting to change. It's starting to change.
And one of the things that I also love about this car and the way you spec'd it is the fact that it is a high performance car. Look, and it is also very personal and very fashionable.
So Gigi, who said I name all my cars. So I've got Hector, the pre-war, so 1934 MGPA. I've got Froglet, who is a 1955 Triumph TR3. I've got Viola, that's a 1974 246 GTS Dino in Viola Metallizzato. I've got
colore belle.
Yes.
Sì.
Lupo Catino is a 250 GT PF coupe with a competition engine, so it basically has a 128F, like equivalent show wheelbase engine with high velocity stacks and a high lift camshaft, and it's got limited slip differential. The whole car was spec'd as a rally car with a competition engine, which is brilliant. And then we've got Gigi, the golden giraffe. And this car I mean, so it's a golden giraffe because it's gold, and it's got a giraffe interior. Now, the purchase of the vehicle literally was, it came about very suddenly. So it was about March, April. I'd gone out with Jim to test the hypercar. So they were in Violunga. And he said, oh, Stacey, why don't you come along? We're testing the hypercar. You get to see it for the first time. And we're sat in the camper van after, I think, the last day of testing. And one of the drivers had crashed the car and on an outlap and taken out the front end. And where, you know, it happens, it's a race car.
Right, exactly.
We sat there, and somebody joked to Jim, you know what would take the sting out of this, Jim, is if Cece bought one of your road cars. And, you know, I laughed. I said, very funny. I've actually been looking for a new day car. And Jim says, well, this could be your daily driver. Why not? The seating position's in the middle. It's perfect. You know, you're in the UK. You travel to Europe. You can do it. And what started out as a joke very quickly, within a week, became a reality. Before I know it, I'd signed a purchase agreement, I'd transferred some money, and I was like, oh my God, it is my car! So this is the first one in the UK. It'll be the first one in the UK, EU.
Exactly.
So, I mean, in terms of the design of the car, it's inspired by Ferrari P45, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Which is
Indeed, I am.
Pininfarina bodied.
One of the most beautiful and functional race cars ever.
Absolutely. So for those that don't know the story, that Jim has two of the most original P cars. Well, he's got two chassis, 0846 and 0854. One is a 412P, the other is a P34. And these two cars were the inspiration. I'll leave that at that because I'll get lots of people.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I'll open a can of worms and we'll be here for the next 5 hours talking about the P cars. But,
exactly.
But they were the inspiration for Ferrari P45, which was Jim going to Pininfarina and saying, I want to put a beautiful body that looks like P34 on an Enzo chassis with an Enzo engine, and there it was born. So as you also know, he then had P45 Competizione, which he used to race at 24 Hours at Nürburgring, and then 003 S and C, which were the first Scuderia Cameron Glickenhaus, basically him saying, why don't I do my own thing?
Exactly.
My own mark. And so he's raced at the Nürburgring 24 Hours with that. The 003S was a street car, and now we've got 004C, which is racing 24 Hours at Nürburgring, and we've got 004S, which is the road car. And so this is in terms of the aesthetic, it's you can see it looks just like Ferrari 445. And in terms of the engine in this is a supercharged Chevy V8, so it's essentially like a Corvette LT4 engine, but it's officially a Glickenhaus.
And how many horsepower?
650 horsepower, but the really special thing about this car is this is not a paddle shift or an automatic. This is a proper gated gearbox manual car. Yeah, it's got a clutch, it's got a gated gearbox, and it's the whole 9 yards. And I think
your entire body is at work.
Yes.
Both
absolutely.
feet.
Well,
hands.
You know what? I'm not saying that it's difficult to drive, but
no,
it's
simply
a lot
it's
of horsepower for
exactly.
there's a lot of torque there. It's really. I mean, you could literally put it in third and set off in third. I mean, it's really quite. But I suppose what I'm trying to say is there is a more powerful version of this, which is 004SC, which is paddle shifts, and that's 850 horsepower. But for 650, you can still get a gearbox strong enough and have a manual gearbox.
And as you said, this is also your daily driver.
Yes.
So do you need 800 horsepower for your daily driver?
And that's the thing. The decision I made, as I said, I'm not even going to use 650. I'm never going to get close to it. With a lot of these cars, that's the problem, is you get these ridiculous specs for 1,000 plus horsepower, and you think they're never going to use it,
Never.
So I think I'd rather have something that is interesting to drive, that I'm actually driving with a manual gearbox, as opposed to something that drives itself.
And one of the other things which is so important to talk about in the context of Jim Glickenhaus and what he has accomplished is the fact that this is a made in America car.
Absolutely. I mean, this is part of the reason that I'm so passionate. I mean, Jim is one of my best friends. He's probably top 3 in the world. I speak to him every day. He's like a second dad to me. I adore him. I mean, my dad gets a bit jealous. I speak all the time. And I, part of me following being a brand ambassador for them here in the UK and then following in the racing is because I believe in his dream and his adventure, and I believe in his work ethic. And there's something very American about it. And I'm not American. I don't live in the US, but I have a US passport, and I'm very proud of that because these cars are hand built in Danbury, Connecticut. Well, this one was made in Italy. because it's a prototype.
Right.
But they will be hand-built in Danbury, Connecticut, and I think it's fantastic that he's going out there and doing something really, and he's 71. He's on his feet the whole time. What a better way, I can't think of a better way to spend your time and money when you've made it to the top than do something like this.
The commitment that Jim has invested in this entire project and all the cars that he's building is so wonderful to see realized in your belief in the car. You're buying a car, you're driving this car and showing it to the world, because it again, you claim not to be remarkable, but nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, Cece Muldoon is remarkable and funny and beautiful and talented and smart. She drives a brilliant car in a brilliant way, and it's what this is all about. This is absolutely amazing, and I'm so glad that I'm here at the Goodwood Festival of Speed to share this moment with Cece Muldoon.
Aw,
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.